Ole Miss is a mortal lock for March Madness, according to the national media. Is it true?
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we'll dive into the latest buzz around Ole Miss basketball. The national media sees the Rebels as a lock for the NCAA tournament. And if that's true, Chris Beard and company are now playing for seeding. ESPN's Joe Lunardi has Ole Miss as a 5 seed, and there's a real potential to even climb higher than that. We'll break down the remaining schedule and what needs to happen for the Rebels to secure that better spot. Plus, on the football front, Landon Duckworth, the highly rated quarterback out of Alabama, has Ole Miss on his mind for the class of 2026. We'll tell you why that is big news for the Rebels. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a shout out to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. You guys are fantastic. And for your second listen, check out Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy for even more SEC coverage. So let's get started. So today I wanted to do something a little bit differently, just a little inside baseball. You know how I like to tell what's going on and all of that, and I'm very transparent about doing this. That's one of the reasons, honestly, I'm probably so successful. But after the Super Bowl, especially the week after the Super Bowl, is up there. It might be the second lowest. It might be the lowest content week of the year for all content creators in college athletics. It just is the way it is. After the Super Bowl, people kind of tune out of video for about a week and a half, and they really don't click back in until spring football, and they click off in the early part of the summer, and they come back for media days. That's the way it is. So there's two really slow days and slow weeks that content creators have to deal with, and that is the day after the Super Bowl and the week after the Super Bowl and the day after the All-Star game in Major League Baseball. Those are the two slowest periods of time for us. So I thought, how can I take advantage of this? You know, whenever stuff like this happens, a lot of people view it and they get all sorts of anxiety about the lower content numbers and the lower view numbers. And I look at it a different way. It's one of those things that experience matters. And I thought, why not try something a little bit differently to see how it goes? Because we'll see how it handles. And I hope everybody enjoys this video. But this video is going to be a little bit different in the fact that we're going to focus a little bit on basketball. And normally the headline, the title, and the picture is all football based because everybody knows that football is by far the largest driver of viewership in the Ole Miss fan base. But we're going to try to do a basketball video this week and see what happened, because there should be some interest amongst Ole Miss fans in this video, because the national media basically are crescendoing, just building up to the point we're saying that Ole Miss is basically a lock for the NCAA tournament. It's at the point where everybody's saying, is Arkansas going to be on the bubble for the tournament? Can they get to 7 wins? Well, Ole Miss is already at 7 wins. So in their mind, Ole Miss is kind of where they need to be. So the takes in this episode is pretty simple. This Ole Miss team is a lock for the NCAA basketball tournament. The Ole Miss would have to lose 7 games and be eliminated in the first round of the SEC tournament to probably not make the tournament. If you lost 8 games in a row, yes, I could see where you did not make it, even though they hit that magic number of 7. But there's nothing that proves that that's going to happen. And Ole Miss is such a good basketball team, the odds are they're going to win 1 or 2 more games, even if they're playing poorly. So they're a lock for the tournament. The national media agrees with that. Listen, Ole Miss can rise up as high as a 2 seed and probably fall as low as an 8 seed. That's their ceiling and a floor this season. A high of a 2, a low of an 8. And I think Ole Miss is going to be wearing a white jersey in that first round or second round game when March Madness begins. And the SEC tournament is becoming less relevant for Ole Miss by the day. Although I will talk in the next segment about why the SEC tournament could be important if you're looking at some big picture type stuff. But for the NCAA basketball tournament and to get ready for that game, the SEC tournament is becoming less relevant by the day. When you look at the Ole Miss tournament resume right now, they have 5 quad 1 wins. They had 6 the other day, but Texas got beat and fell out of a quad 1 win by a couple of spots. Texas is a couple of wins away from getting back in that area. But Ole Miss is 7th in the SEC in net rankings. They are number 19 in the latest Associated Press poll. They have an 18-6 season record, and their top win is probably the best top win in all of college basketball, save for maybe Florida winning at Auburn, but beating Alabama in Coleman Coliseum. That's probably the best win of the season, and Ole Miss has no bad losses. If you look at what's going on their resume, if you just go to warrennolan.com, Ole Miss has 6 losses, and they're all quadrant 1. And that is both the net and the RPI saying that. As far as the net rankings, they're 5-6 in quad 1 games, and RPI they're 3-6 in quad 1 games. Ole Miss is in a very, very good position. They're 11-2 at home. They have a winning record on the road, and they're 3-1 at neutral courts. All of the stuff that builds up a resume, Ole Miss is very high up in, and metrically, like they're the lowest turnover team in the entire country. There's a lot of things that are going their way. If you look at them on the net, they're currently number 2 in the net rankings. And all of this is probably the reason why the national media are kind of jumping on the bandwagon of what's going on. Listen, the national media have a love affair, honestly, with Chris Beard. They do. They took a little bit, about a year off whenever he went through that whole Texas thing talking about it. But now it's okay for them to gush about Chris Beard again. And they're working overtime to get Chris Beard to Indiana or whoever else will take the job, because I'm absolutely convinced that the national media, the flyover type media, they want a good coach anywhere but Ole Miss. They want a good coach at one of their chosen programs, since they get to crown blue bloods. So Indiana would make that very happy. And I told you earlier in the weekend why Indiana, other than Chris Beard being a really good basketball coach, there's not really a connection there. There was more of a connection from him going from Texas to Ole Miss than there is from going Ole Miss to Indiana. Other than the fact that maybe Indiana has a name, but Indiana hasn't won in 20 or 30 years in basketball. They've kind of done the Tennessee thing, the Miami of Florida thing, and their role as a blue blood status kind of dropped down quite a bit. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. But the national media, they're going to do that because coaching searches get clicks. Chris Beard gets clicks. And Ole Miss being good at basketball, they don't know what to do with that. They don't know what bucket that's in. But they know that this year that Ole Miss is probably unlocked for the NCAA basketball tournament. We're going to talk the next segment about how high this Ole Miss basketball team can go and where exactly they sit. And we look at the schedule left over and some of the benchmarks that Ole Miss has a chance to clear this season that nobody's even talking about. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But right now, the national media is putting out the tweets. Ole Miss is unlocked for the tournament. You need 7 wins in the SEC to make the NCAA tournament. Ole Miss is 7-4 currently. And that LSU game, that was a fun game. It was a fun game because it's a game that Ole Miss should have lost. It was the exact opposite of the Texas A&M game. And Dre Davis showed up yet again to steal victory from the jaws of defeat in a huge game to keep the momentum going. And now Ole Miss on Wednesday night plays South Carolina. They have a game against the Gamecocks. South Carolina is last in the SEC. Ole Miss has a chance to get to that magic number 8. We talked about all season the race to 8 for Ole Miss. And you've got a game against the number 16 team in the Southeastern Conference. On their floor, it's going to be difficult. South Carolina has single-digit losses in games that they were in and could have won against like Alabama, against Auburn, against Mississippi State. Colonial Life Center is a difficult place to play. So Ole Miss is going to have to pack a lunch to go up there and get that win. But if they win that game, already get that one win, and we talk about splitting every single week at least. 1-1 every weekend gets Ole Miss a very high seed in the NCAA tournament. And if Ole Miss is able to get that first win against South Carolina, Mississippi State, though you want to win that game and you probably should win that game by a good bit, it's not a must win this week because you've already cleared that 1-1 hurdle. And all of a sudden you're playing for 9-4 in the Southeastern Conference against the Mississippi State Bulldogs. It's really interesting stuff. And it's not just the NCAA tournament. Ole Miss basketball is kind of on the verge of making program history with their best ever seed in sight. How realistic is it for the Rebels to set a new program mark? We break down their path and just how far this team can go. So stay tuned. You know, after the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refurbishing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether I'm tidying up, clearing out, or just want to have the space to look new at the start of this year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and a huge selection makes it easy to find the pieces that kind of fit my style and budget. My favorite part, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate recently. Whenever I bought a recliner, I found everything I needed in no time. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. And whatever your decor style is, why did you pick these items and what do you love about them? Well, I had a recliner and I'm getting ready for a surgery in a couple of weeks. So whenever Wayfair asks what I need the recliner for, how does it make me feel and stuff like that, it lets me think, okay, I'm getting ready for a surgery recovery. So I needed a chair that I could recover in, that was comfortable, that was okay with me spending a good bit of time in. That's why I picked that chair. And they did that. You know, it was a fast time crunch that we got done because surgery's coming up pretty quick, and they were able to do that. And the delivery was hassle-free and fast. So give your home a refresh that it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WARFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. So the Ole Miss basketball team, it's not just being a lock to the NCAA tournament that's kind of interesting for what is happening right now in Ole Miss basketball. I was in school at Ole Miss in 97 and 98. You know, those teams, whenever Ole Miss went on that terrific Tad Smith Coliseum home run, I was at those games. When we stormed the court after beating Kentucky, I was at that game. The game that Dick Vitale called. Keith Carter played in. Mike White played in. That is kind of a reference point for everything. And that 98 team, I believe was the 98 team that lost to Valparaiso. Ole Miss was a 4 seed in that tournament, which is the second largest seed that Ole Miss has ever had. And it made me think, because you look at the Joe Lunardi bracketology and all of these brackets that are coming out, Ole Miss is kind of consistently in that 4 or 5 range at the moment. And Ole Miss has a chance to move up. They genuinely do. If you want to look at their remaining schedule, Ole Miss has a road game on Wednesday night against South Carolina. Follow that up with a home game against Mississippi State, and then a road game at Vanderbilt. That at Vanderbilt game is going to be very difficult, but it should be a game that Ole Miss is favored in. Ole Miss should be favored against South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. Those are 3 wins that will take Ole Miss to 21-6. That's if Ole Miss can win these next couple of games, they have 21-6 sitting on the table. And then you have a game at Auburn. That's going to be an incredibly difficult game. I do not think Auburn's a particularly good matchup for Ole Miss right now. Then you have a home game against Oklahoma. That's got to win. That's 22 wins. You have a home game against Tennessee. That's a game that you can get, even though it's against a top 10 opponent. That's 23 wins if you can get that. And then you have a game at Florida, another top 10 team, a team that just went to Auburn and took down the Auburn Tigers. So you're looking at 23-7 in the regular season. And trust me, there's a reason I'm throwing these numbers out. If Ole Miss can finish this list at 5-2, and it's going to be increasingly difficult, but if you look at that, if Ole Miss does it, they can do it. 5-2 is it's upper end. It's slightly Pollyanna, but it's doable because that Tennessee game is going to be difficult, and that Vanderbilt game is going to be difficult. At Vanderbilt has beaten Tennessee and Kentucky already on their home court. That's going to be a difficult game. They've got them going pretty good. But if Ole Miss can go 5-2 in their last 7 games, that puts them at 23-7. And at 23-7, they are probably at a very minimum a 4 seed, and they might, after the win against Tennessee, work their way up into a 3 seed. So that's my point there. And when you look at this, their all-time wins in a season was 27. That is the program record for wins in a season. The 2001 and 2002 team that went to the Sweet 16 won 27 games. The 2012 and 2013 teams that was a 12 seed in the NCAA tournament won 27 games. That kind of lets you know the variability, what's going on. There was a 12 seed in the NCAA tournament and a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, and those are the 2 program record holders for winning games in a season. And that 3 seed kind of becomes at least matchable if Ole Miss can go 5-2 to close the season. If they can win a couple of games in the SEC tournament to get to 7-2, all of a sudden the wins in the season mark becomes attainable. That's the reason I'm talking about. I'm talking about program areas that Ole Miss can get to. They can get to 27. They need 9 wins. They have 7 regular season games, the SEC tournament, and the NCAA tournament to get there. They need to win 9 games. So if Ole Miss goes on any kind of run in Nashville, if Ole Miss makes it to the Sweet 16 or beyond, they have a real chance to hit that 27 number. And if they do that, it goes down to being one of the best basketball teams in Ole Miss history. That is pretty cool. And you look at the press, we talk about how they noticed early in the first half and everything. And we talked that Ole Miss has moved up to 19. Ole Miss moved up 6 spots after beating Kentucky and after the LSU comeback game that they had. They're right in the area. If they can get to 16, that's 4 seed land. They are in the area of being a 5 seed. They really are. And that Auburn-Alabama game that's coming up this weekend, that's going to absolutely feed families. Then you have Florida at number 3. The SEC is 1, 2, 3, and 5 so far. They also have the number 8 team, the number 15 team, and then Ole Miss comes into the fold as well. I'm telling you, Ole Miss is in a pretty heady area right now for what they can do as a basketball program. And I wanted to take the opportunity to kind of give them the respect that they have earned and they deserve. And people are starting to pay attention, even within the Ole Miss fan base, to this Ole Miss team and what they could be. Again, if Ole Miss can somehow pull out the next 3 games that they should be favored in at all times, but we saw in the LSU game, it can be tricky on the road. And Tim Thomas always talks about how the reality is when you play basketball on the road, it's like spotting the home team 10 points. It's difficult to play on the road. So at South Carolina and at Vanderbilt are going to be harder games than people realize, but Ole Miss should be able to win those games. They're better teams than who they're going against, just record-wise. I think it was Andy Kennedy they always used to talk about, or Bill Parcells as well. You are what your record says you are. If Ole Miss can go 3-0 in these games and get to that magic 21-6 number, you're playing with house money coming into those last 4 games. And those last 4 games at Auburn, Tennessee at home, Florida on the road, and you have Oklahoma in the middle. That Oklahoma kind of becomes a must-win game because you need the feel-goods. That's the reason it's a must-win game. It's not for anything else other than having at Auburn and at Florida on the schedule. You need to kind of hold serve at home. So we'll see exactly how it goes for Ole Miss. The SEC tournament is in March 12th through 16th. NCAA tournament is March 18th through April 7th. That is from the Tuesday night game. Ole Miss is not going to be playing on Tuesday night. So it's probably closer to March 20th to April 7th. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I'm really looking forward to it. Just to let everybody know, Amazon is partnering with Locked On. And what we're doing is we are going to make a very well-produced NCAA tournament show that is going to air, I think, nightly during the event, where you're going to have 4 analysts talking about the game. You're going to have the local Locked On host like me talking about the games for both the men and the women's. They're going to be basically all the way through. And Locked On is using one of their studios in Dallas, Texas. Amazon has put the money to make this a big deal, and they're trying to build the graphics up and things like that. Hopefully their graphics is better than the Super Bowl graphics, because I'm going to be honest, my graphics are better than what Fox put out there for the Super Bowl graphics this year. It's absolutely ridiculous. But that is the case. Locked On and Locked On Ole Miss, we're going to blow out the NCAA tournament coverage, especially if Ole Miss's men's team and women's team, for the first time in school history, both managed to make the NCAA tournament. I'm going to really hammer that home. You'll see a lot from Brantley Sanderson during that time base, just like you hear from Tim Thomas during the men's side whenever we do that. We're going to have a good time with that before my surgery as well. A little bit later on this week, we're going to have Brian Smith again. Everybody seemed to enjoy that. We're going to talk about the Under Armour camp in Atlanta. We're going to talk about Landon Duckworth. We're going to have a good time there. And speaking of Landon Duckworth, he's got Ole Miss on his mind. Could the talented quarterback be leaning towards the Rebels? We'll break down what we're hearing in our final segment. Stay tuned. So, Landon Duckworth appears to be the leader in the clubhouse for the Ole Miss 2026 quarterback recruit. Now, we're still fairly early in the process. And according to Chad Simmons of On 3, he talked about this. Ole Miss is way up on the list, and they're going to take official visits to Ole Miss, to South Carolina. Georgia's involved, and Florida State. 4 good programs that are really good at recruiting. It's going to be a battle for this athlete. But right now, Ole Miss is on his mind. Everything you see says Ole Miss kind of leads. And we talked about this when we did a video on Reese Wise about 2 weeks ago, that Ole Miss is shooting for the stars in these players. And because of that, Reese Wise, his committable offer is going to be waiting, because Reese Wise might be the 4 in this class. But Landon Duckworth, Zach Berry on 3 said Ole Miss leads for his service. Now, it's February, granted, so we have about 11 months to go, but you'd rather be leading than not leading. So Zach Berry is saying that. And who is Landon Duckworth? He's a quarterback out of Jackson High School in Alabama. He is rated consensusly at 105th in the country as far as player, not quarterback. He's the number 8 quarterback overall and the number 8 player in Alabama. If you want to look at the individual stat numbers to see how they are, Rivals has him as the number 25 player in the entire country. He's a 4-star player, well into that 5-star range. Whenever they expand the 5 stars out, if he's number 25, he is going to be a 5-star player. ESPN has him at number 110. He's a 4-star as well. Also has him as the number 1 quarterback in the whole class and the number 6 player in all of Alabama. 247 has him at number 66, number 5 quarterback overall, number 4 player in Alabama. And then On 3 has him as a 3-star player, the number 28 quarterback and the number 12 player in Alabama. Apparently, they do not like him. But remember what we're dealing with right now. We're in the middle of combine season. And in the middle of combine season means players are going to jump and they're going to fall. And once this is kind of the confirmation bias season, you're going to go to these combines. They're going to put them through drill. And if you think highly of him, you're going to find a reason to put him up there. If you think lowly of him, you're going to see what he does and find a reason to keep him where you think. And if he changes your mind, you have a chance to elevate. You see a lot of movement during this time of year. I like the Under Armour camps. I like all of that going on, but that's just the way it is early in the process. And now, since everything is sped up, May and June are the official visit seasons for the 2026 class. It's no longer December and January like people my age remember whenever we were trying to figure out if Eli Manning was going to be an Ole Miss Rebel on National Signing Day in February. No, they sign now at the beginning of December. They take their official visits before the football season. And during the football season, you're all kind of getting ready for the next class. That is the way in the calendar that recruiting works. And with the transfer portal, you kind of get to figure out where you sit here, what you need to add here to have a nice, well-rounded class. Landon Duckworth, very athletic quarterback, strong arm, really good player. We showed his video a couple of weeks back. And if he is the guy that Lane Kiffin is all about, which it looks like he is, it said on here on the On3 article, I had a great time at Ole Miss, Duckworth told On3's Chad Simmons at the Under Armour Atlanta thing. The coaches are real. They broke down film with Coach Weiss. I spent time with Coach Kiffin, and I can tell they are genuine and real people. I had a great time on the visit, and the best part was going over the offense with Coach Weiss and learning how he builds his offense around the quarterback. He showed me a lot. They are making me feel special. As soon as I got there, all the coaches ran out of the office and hugged me. Since they offered, we have been talking. Ole Miss is definitely up there for me. There are some other schools that I'm looking at, but Ole Miss, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida State are the main schools I am focused on right now, Duckworth said. All of those are talking to me quite a bit. They want me to visit in the spring, and I'm planning to take visits to all four. That is the situation. It looks like at this point he is the leader in the clubhouse for the 2026 quarterback for Ole Miss. If Ole Miss is acting like this, they're recruiting at a very high level. We'll see exactly how it goes. But it looks like Landon Duckworth might be the best odds of the pie-in-the-sky quarterbacks that are out there. And we'll see what happens if he takes those official visits and where he goes once the visits actually happen. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day and making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Dalen Flowers on the show tonight. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. And for your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in all of college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Howdy toddy, everyone. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.